like to call to order the City of Littleton City Council virtual regular meeting for Tuesday, November 17th, 2020. It is 6:30 or 18:30. If we can have the roll call, please.
Mayor Valdez.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Malin.
Here.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Here.
Councilmember Elrod.
Here.
Councilmember Fay.
Here.
Councilmember Grove.
Here.
Councilmember Milliman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you, Colleen. Sarah Fox, Assistant to the City Manager, if you could tell us how this meeting will proceed.
Good evening, Mayor, members of Council, staff, citizens, and guests. I'm Sama Fox, Assistant to the City Manager, and I'll be serving as the moderator for this evening's virtual council meeting. We are streaming this meeting on Cable Channel 8, Facebook, and on our website, littletongov.org. Please be aware, comments left on Facebook Live will not be moderated and will not be included in the meeting minutes. Those wishing to participate in any public comment portion of the meeting are advised to view the meeting at littletongov.org under My Littleton, Littleton 8 TV, as this broadcast has the least amount of delay. The agenda will be handled by Mayor Valdez in the same way it would be handled for a regular in-person meeting. As always, citizen participation is encouraged during public comment and public hearings. To participate via phone, please call 669-900-6833, and when prompted, enter the webinar ID 963-3381-1183. There will be two opportunities for citizen participation this evening, once during public comment and again during ordinances on second reading and public hearings. If you wish to speak during either of these opportunities, please call in early and stay on the line. Again, the number is 669-900-6833. And when prompted, use the webinar ID 963-3381-1183. When public comment or the public hearing is announced, press *9 to raise your hand and be recognized. Microphones will be muted for all citizens calling in. Citizens can press *9 to raise their hand and be recognized. Speakers will have 3 minutes to address council. The city clerk will announce when you have 30 seconds remaining and again when your time is up. We expect comments to be civil. Disrespectful or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. For agenda items, Mayor Valdez will ask for a motion and a second, followed by discussion and a vote. Council will vote on agenda items using a thumbs up for a yes vote and a thumbs down for a no vote. The clerk will call each vote with all ayes and nays. Again, if you plan on participating during public comment or public hearings, please call 669-900-6833. Use the webinar ID 963-3381-1183. Please stay on the line and press *9 to raise your hand and speak. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you very much, Sarah Fox. All right, we'll go down to approval of the agenda. Council, do we have any changes? Seeing none, we will proceed. Let's go to comments and reports. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. No report here this evening.
That leaves plenty of time for our city attorney.
Yeah, Mark has deferred to me to deliver the good news that everyone has probably heard by now. Governor Polis today came out with a new dial on our COVID spectrum, if you will. Essentially, that dial is adding one more phase before kind of the stay-at-home order that we saw initially. And the thought is that Arapahoe County, I think it goes into effect on Friday at 5 p.m. We'll be moving to that red part of the dial. I would say by and far the largest impact is going to be to our restaurants. What it does is it closes all in-person seating. If they have outdoor seating, they can do that, but no in-person seating. They're obviously still available for takeout and pickup and things like that, but obviously a pretty large impact on a lot of our restaurants in the city. So that's supposed to go into effect on Friday at 5 p.m. I think the city manager may have a meeting coming up with mayors and other city managers in the region within the next few days to talk with Governor Polis about kind of the next steps in terms of where we are. Mark, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, correct. Council, we've shared with this kind of routine in the past. Myself and the mayor, we meet our counterparts, county commissioners, county staff here on Friday morning here at 8. And again, it's just to review the latest data and talk through exactly what our city attorney was sharing. So we are moving to the next level. We'll talk about exactly what that means. We'll also talk about the communication and how do we get the word out here to our communities, to our businesses. So that tends to be part of the conversation as well.
Thank you. Reed, did it say anything about churches?
Churches. Sorry, that's the old level. Indoor seating is 25% capacity up to 50 persons in churches.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Did you have anything else?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Oh, great, thank you very much. We'll go to council now. Let's start with Councilmember Driscoll.
No report, Mayor.
Councilmember Elrod.
Yep, two things. At the last DRCOG meeting that I attended, we had the Energy Office of Colorado present to DRCOG in achieving Governor Polis's goal of 100% renewable energy by 2040. As it relates to municipalities, the ask, there were a number of action items, but in particular for municipality, the ask is to, attempt a transition to electrical vehicles when possible, and approach land use planning to reduce vehicle miles traveled. So that could sound like incentives for land use decisions at the local government level to reduce pollution or support access of housing near jobs, for example. For employers over a certain threshold to develop a trip reduction program. So they gave several examples, and the obvious one is expansion of public transit. So they gave several examples that they are asking municipalities to consider to reduce the vehicle miles traveled, which is a contributing factor to the air quality that is exacerbated, obviously, in Colorado by a number of factors. Outside of just our use. The other thing that was also shared with us is the state demographer's office also shared the projections of growth over the next 30 years are slowing. So we're getting a little bit of a breather versus the past 30 years. So maybe good news, bad news there. Second item was we met at the Littleton Arts and Culture Commission, had a great meeting last week where we kicked off the strategic planning process and began the initial review of the draft, and we'll continue working through that here through the next couple of months. That is also going to be supplemented by a citizen survey that is being crafted and sent out to the community as well for community input. The LAC committee will likely look to come to council to share some of that here in the new year in 2021. And then final, just a plug to Colorado Gives Day is coming up on December 8th. We have a lot of great nonprofits in the city of Littleton. Just encouraging everyone to remember December 18th is Colorado Gives Day and to give to, obviously, Littleton nonprofits first. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Fay.
People are wondering what's going to happen with folks who are homeless. And Metro Denver Housing Initiative put out an announcement today that they have compiled a list of shelters, emergency shelters, and those are available in case anybody wants to keep those. Every once in a while I get a question about, well, where do I send somebody who needs help? MDHI, that's Metro Denver Housing Initiative.org/help. That's all.
Great. Thank you very much. Councilmember Grove.
A couple things. I attended the monthly Next Gen meeting, and they gave a nice presentation last time about what they were doing and what they plan to do going forward. So I hope we can continue to support this group. On November 9th, I attended the Envision workshop. This topic was all about the Littleton corridors, which we're going to look at next for the ULUC. And that would be Santa Fe, Bellevue, Littleton Boulevard, and Broadway. They gave a great overview, and then they did something like we used to do when we were in person. They broke us up into groups, and we were able to provide feedback to KKC, and then we reported out. And everything went right on time. They ended right at 6. The time really flew by. If you're interested in, they're going to do some more workshops, and I think it's going to be the same format, which was a great format, and that will be on December 14th. We also attended a South Suburban meeting with South Suburban, our bi-monthly meeting. They're working on have a 5-year capital plan, and so far nothing's changed with respect to Littleton. However, they're holding off on some contracts until January, just in case they have to make adjustments due to COVID. But that's good news. I'm working with Karina and staff on projects for the open space fund, so we can bring that back to council. Remember that budget item had a proviso on it, and so we're going to make a recommendation that we can talk about at a future meeting. They're still exploring options on what to do with the lack of water in Ridgeview Pond and Ketron Pond, and nothing has been resolved. There's been a consultant that's looked into some options, but it's not terribly optimistic. So staff has been in contact with the neighbors, especially of the Ridgeview area, to keep them up to date on what's going on. Powers Park, I think we talked about that. There was a recommendation made for some upgrades by the South Metro Land Conservancy. Unfortunately, South Suburban doesn't have any budget at this time, but the Conservancy can maybe go get some partners to help with that. So we'll see more of that in the future. I also attended a DRCOG study session, and they revealed their master plan, and it included projects on transportation in the greater Metro Denver area. And they had a request for 137 projects, for a total of $6.4 billion. They settled on funding for $1.4 billion for 73 projects. And of that, Arapahoe County got about 6% of the funds. Jefferson County got 16%, and Douglas County got about 7%. So that kind of gives you an idea. Denver got the most, 21%, and some of the projects go over jurisdictions. It just gives you an idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Milliman.
Thanks, Jerry. A couple of things to share too tonight. I echo Pam's sentiment about the Envision series on November 9th. Thanks to everybody that participated in that. I am just super excited that we're starting this conversation about the corridors and the fact that I think it's going to open up a lot of opportunities for diverse housing options in Littleton. So I'm really, really excited about it, and I hope everybody can stay involved with that discussion. So my husband and I met a couple of friends on October 24th, boy, that was like almost a month ago, in downtown Littleton for the silent disco on Main Street. And I just want to send out a huge thanks to Kelly and her team, and I think it's specifically Elizabeth Schofield, for pulling that together. It was so much fun. I mean, I'm sure we look like complete fools out in the street, but it was just fantastic to be out there with people you didn't know, with your headsets on, dancing to whatever music you want to dance to. But it's like silent on the street when you take your headphones off. It was so much fun. I hope we do that again and again and again. It brought a lot of people out into downtown Littleton. It was fabulous. So a couple things with the library and the museum. We just had our monthly meeting. Unfortunately, because of the new restrictions as of right now, walk-in service at the library is suspended. Curbside service for book pickup will start on November 16th. And right now, the museum, as of today, I don't know if things are going to change on Friday, but because they have such large outdoor spaces, the museum is going to remain at its current visitor capacity, which is 50 visitors per hour. And then one last thing, I would put out a plea to everybody again. This is coming from me as a healthcare worker who is incredibly exhausted right now, and I'm not even working in an ICU. Please, please, I'm begging everybody to wear a mask, wear it outside, inside, with your bubble friends, anywhere and everywhere. The virus doesn't care, just doesn't care. And it's finding very welcoming, hospitable hosts in our community. And I'll just, I want to reference this really quickly. I guess Kyle Clark on 9 News had recently made a point that it's a lot easier for governments to regulate businesses than people, hence all the restrictions that are now coming down on our businesses. And although less than 10% of COVID can be traced back to restaurants are the ones that are being punished for all of this. And I find that really sad when all we have to do is just follow the CDC guidelines on their recommendations. So that's my soapbox. Thank you. And thanks, Jerry.
Great. Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem Millen.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just quickly, so folks watching know that staff and council are continuing to keep track of this topic. I'll just report that the mayor and I, along with Chief Stevens and city attorney and a couple of other staff members, toured Triple J Armory and met with their ownership with an eye toward council's upcoming discussion on that. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. And I did want to say kudos to the Next Gen group that did their presentation at our last meeting. They did a great job. And I think Ifton in particular did a wonderful job doing their presentation. Also, I've attended the over at Bemis Library. You know, they have events for the kids. Bemis Library is so important for our youth. And I know, Mark, you're making a city manager. I know that you're making some changes that are just necessary right now. But Bemis Library is so important to our community that in ways we don't know, as well as the museum. When you go over there, there's just tons of kids that love to be there. And with that, council, our next meeting is next Tuesday, and that's the 17th. But then the following Tuesday, we have no meeting. It was canceled. It's just before Thanksgiving. All right, so great. With that, we have item number 4 on our agenda, citizens' appearance. We have no citizens' appearances tonight, but we are now under item 5, public comment. I will open the public comments. It is now 6:48. Sam Fox, if you please inform the audience how they can participate.
Thank you, Mayor. If you wish to address the City Council under public comment, please call 669-900-6833. And when prompted, enter the webinar ID 963-3381-1183. Please press star 9 to be recognized. Citizen microphones will be automatically muted until the citizen is called upon to speak by the last 3 digits of their phone number. Please state your name and district or address clearly for the record. A reminder, the clerk will notify you when you have 30 seconds remaining and again when your time is up. Public comment is an opportunity to express opinions or ask questions regarding issues that are not part of public hearings on tonight's agenda. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. And the city clerk will notify you when you have 30 seconds remaining and again when your time is up. The City Council is not authorized by the Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, comment, or take action at the meeting on any issue raised by public comment that is not part of tonight's agenda. The mayor may refer the matter to the city manager and/or the city attorney for immediate comment after public comment, or to staff to obtain additional information and report back to the council as appropriate. We expect comments to be civil. Disrespectful or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. Mayor, I'd like to remind everyone in the queue to go ahead and press star 9 if you'd like to raise your hand to speak. Our first caller will be caller 776. Caller 776, please press star 6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I guess you need my name, Karen Hawes, Hawes. What else did you need?
District or address.
2878 West Long Circle, Unit F, Littleton, Colorado, 80120.
All right. Thank you very much, Karen.
Sure. I thought I had submitted online a comment, but I didn't see it in the comments included in today's agenda. So I just figured I'd call in and state them for the record. Excuse me. So I'm a short-term renter owner, and I occupy my home where I rent the rooms for short-term rentals through Airbnb.
Karen,
yeah.
we do have a section of the meeting tonight where the public comments will be taken on short-term rentals, and that's what sounds like that's where you're talking about. So if you could hold your comments, so that way it'll be fresh with us.
Okay, great. I will do that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Karen.
Sure. I guess what was this section then? I kind of missed what this section was.
It'll be coming up here. It'll be section. You have the agenda. It will be item number 8A.
Right, but right now the comments are for what in general?
Items not on the agenda or on the consent agenda.
Okay. No, I will wait till later then.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Certainly. All right.
Selma, if we could have the next caller, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We have a number of callers on the line, but we have no other hands raised. So I'd like to just make one more reminder. If you'd like to speak during public comment, please press *9. We do have a hand raised. Caller 819, you have been unmuted. Caller 819, please begin speaking.
All right, caller.
Hi, Council. This is Pam Chadbourne. I live in downtown Littleton, and since it was brought up, a couple of comments. Thank you, Councilmember Fay, for talking about who to contact about homeless folks who need help. I've come across a couple, and it's hard to find who to call. So I appreciate the reference, and I hope that somebody puts it in the meeting minutes so that other folks can have access to that information. I wanted to talk about the Envision Studio and the Historic Preservation Board meeting. The Envision Studio was interesting. There were about 70, 75 participants, but 14 or so were city employees or consultants. 15 or so are on city council or other boards or commissions, and 4 are former city council folks. 5 or so are people I would call obviously special interests. Developers and property owners who are going to profit from upzoning and increased entitlements of various places in Littleton. So right there, about half of the group was potentially just citizens. And then we were split into 4 groups, and apparently the comments of those 4 groups are going to be used as input. Now, you've got a quarter of 30, 35, 40 folks. So that's not, I'm going to tell you, this is not representative input for what was presented. And also, by splitting up into groups, no group heard what the other groups heard. So for me, this is baffling. You've got to have a system understanding of the city. You've got to understand how it functions, and especially you're talking corridors at this Envision Studio. You've got to understand how they work, what their growth is going to be in the future or not, how the roads are going to function as roads, and then how they function as city property or zoning property. And my primary comment about that is corridors, folks. Littleton was designed intentionally to keep residences off of corridors. In the 50s, we didn't do that to other people. We didn't put people living on corridors because it's dangerous. Your kids or your dogs get out and they get smashed on the road. And it's noisy. It's a bad place to live. So Envision Studio is not doing the job it needs to do. Historic Preservation Board, we're losing a parcel of historic merit up at near Littleton Boulevard and Broadway. We've got to get their input sooner. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Pam. Selma, next caller, please.
Mayor, we have no other hands raised at this time.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We will close the public comment at 6:55. City manager or city attorney, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
No follow-up, Mayor.
Nothing for me, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to the callers. All right. We're going to move on to item number 6 on our agenda, the consent agenda items. Sama, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Consent agenda items may be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion. The consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member.
Great. Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem Millen, if you could please introduce the items.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We have 9 consent agenda items tonight, so I will try to move quickly through them. Consent agenda item A, ordinance 44-2020, an ordinance on first reading authorizing renewal of 4 farm lease agreements for South Platte Renew. B, resolution 76-2020, approving an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement regarding design and construction of drainage and flood control improvements for South Platte River at Reynolds Landing. C, resolution 75-2020, approving an intergovernmental agreement with Mile High Flood District regarding final design, right-of-way acquisition, and construction of drainage and flood control improvements for Jackass Gulch at Highline Canal. D, ordinance 28-2020, an ordinance on first reading approving a 5-year agreement with Cartograph Systems LLC for an enterprise asset management system. Item E, resolution 73-2020, approving a memorandum of understanding between the Littleton Police Department and the Rocky Mountain Regional Computer Forensics Laboratory for participation on the RCFL Task Force. F, resolution 74-2020, approving an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between City of Littleton and Jefferson County regarding the CARES Act local government distributions. Item G, ordinance 47-2020, an ordinance on first reading amending Chapter 20 of Title 3 of the Littleton City Code regarding medical marijuana centers. Item H, ordinance 48-2020, an ordinance on first reading amending Chapter 21 of Title 3 of the Littleton City Code regarding retail marijuana establishments. And item I, approval of the October 20th, 2020 virtual regular meeting minutes.
Great. Thank you very much. Council, I'm looking for a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve consent items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Driscoll and a second from the Mayor Pro Tem. Council, we'll do a thumbs up for approval and a thumbs down for not approve. Ready, vote.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for reading those. General business, item number 7, general business. We have ID number 20-284, Downtown Historic District Project Update. Let's see. So we have tonight, we're going to get an update, Council, on the progress of the Downtown Historic District. Oh, let's see. Staff does recommend that we continue it. We have no required action from council tonight unless we want to stop the project. So right now, I'll just turn it right over to the city manager and we'll get a presentation.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. Again, this is a work item that the council directed staff to pursue. We did promise council that we would come back periodically and update the council on our progress, and that's what this evening is. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jennifer Henninger, our Community Development Director, and let her make the presentation.
And in a surprise move, Andrea will actually be doing our presentation tonight. She has definitely been our cheerleader and spear leader on this. So Andrea, do you want to provide that update?
Yes, I will. Now let me get my screen going here.
Success. We can see the screen.
Okay, great. Just one more second. All right, you still see the PowerPoint? All right. So, good evening, Council. I'm Andrea Mimnall. I'm Senior Planner in Community Development Department. And just as some background, in August of this year, Council directed staff together with the Historical Preservation Board to prepare an application for a downtown historic district. And the work has begun, and tonight's presentation is an update on where we are. So the first set of tasks in this somewhat lengthy project are shown in your screen under current projects. And this includes reviewing downtown buildings and also the administration of the historic district regulations, making sure that we have things in place for the process of establishing the historic district and what the regulations will be should it pass in October of 2021, or rather December of 2021. And after we go through some of the tasks that we're working on now, I'll just speak for a few minutes on the next steps. So the first of the three tasks that we're working on is an evaluation of the city's existing historic district regulations. And HPBN staff have looked at the existing code, identified what processes and criteria can be clarified, and together HPBN staff will be digging deep to develop some recommendations for the historic preservation code that can be included in the ULUC. This project is currently in progress. Let's see. So simultaneous to this project, staff and HPB are also working on updating inventory forms back from 1997. Each property has a 2-page form, as you can see here, and it includes a photo and some information on things like your build, architectural style, integrity of the building, and its historic significance. And these forms are integral to understanding the overall historic significance of the district and will provide information to address the criteria in our code for approval of the historic district. And I'd like to point out that HPB created 3 work groups to take on the projects associated with developing the historic district application, and 2 board members that were assigned to this task, Rick Cronenberger and Chris Geddes, have put a lot of work into this, and they're doing a great job. So just wanted to really call them out for doing a wonderful thing here for all of us. All right. And then just to show a little bit of the work that they've done here, here you can see what's known as the Creamery building. This served as the town of Littleton's creamery in the early days. And from 1997, when that first survey was done, until 2020, you can see there are a few changes. You can notice the little window that's put up on that half story above. But these, the change is not considered a major change. It's minor, and this building still holds its integrity. The next thing that we're working on is taking that information that we got from the survey and putting together a big spreadsheet of identifying when the changes occurred and how they were approved by HPB or by staff, or perhaps some of these buildings are not in a historic district and went through a different sort of process. And so we can really track all the changes that have occurred to the buildings downtown, which we've determined are quite a few. So that's an overview of the 3 projects we're currently working on. And I've put this slide up to show you in this graphic where we are in the overall process. The red arrow shows where we are today in November, and we're kind of completing that first work group update on this downtown surveys. but we are still in phase one. Phase one will go all the way through April. And as this work group finishes up their group, we're going to be starting very quickly with our second work group, 2 new board members. We'll be working on that together with me on the next round of topics. And then eventually we will get to the point of developing the actual application, bringing it back to City Council for review. And if we get the go ahead, it will be submitted and be in process. And again, the anticipated date to come to council would be in December 2021. And so that's it for the presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Andrea. Council, do you have any questions? We have Council Member Milliman.
Andrea, I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you to you and to HPB for doing all this hard work. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. We have Council Member Grove.
The same line, I also have a comment in speaking with the chair of the HPV. The expertise and enthusiasm of those members has been just at a highest level we've seen in a very long time. They are just doing a great job. They bring expertise from their jobs and their histories. So it's really, really noticeable, and they're all enthusiastic about these wonderful projects that they're working on.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem Mullen.
Thanks, Mayor. Andrea, you mentioned basically bringing the project before council in December. I'm trying to think when the new council gets seated. Is it anticipated that that'd be a decision for this council or the next council?
Yeah, so the schedule shows that the historic district will get underway the process in the fall. And the idea, the way the schedule is planned, is that we need to have the ULUC in place because the current regulations in our existing historic preservation code leave something to be desired. There's a lot of uncertainty and lack of clarity in some of the processes for modifying your building. And we felt it was really in the best interest to be able to sell this idea of the district to property owners, to have something clearly written that everyone could understand and that was fair and efficient. And so after the ULC is expected to be approved October 2021, then at that point, the historic district would move forward and is scheduled to come before council in December 2021. So yes,
okay.
there could be different council members, yes.
Okay, thanks, Andrea.
Councilmember Elrod.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you to the HPB board and others that are helping through this process. Really looking forward to this, really happy that we are doing this now is absolutely critical. And I think you bring up a good point of the reliance on the ULUC as that enables and helps us to truly get to this necessary and I think desired outcome for our city. So thank you for that reminder. With that, is there anything else that council can do to help continue to support and move this forward for you and HPB?
Well, that's a good question. I think in this first stage, we're digging into history and our forms and our processes, doing the background information. And we may be set for the moment, but thank you for asking. And I think that it could be very possible we could suggest some ways for support as we move further along in the process. And I'll talk with Jennifer and Kathleen about that.
Great. Thank you very much. City Manager.
Mayor and Council, I think the Pro Tem raises an interesting question here about when does this actually come to the council for review and approval? I think this is something I probably need to look at with the staff more closely. Clearly, the ULUC must be adopted first before we can proceed here with this phase. But if at all possible, this current council who's seated probably does need to make the decision here, because you're going to get all the briefings between now and then. So we'll staff and see what we can do to kind of line that up a little bit better in time. It's roughly the middle of November, if I remember correctly, when the new council would be seated.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. And I just want to comment on what at-large member Grove had mentioned, that this board expertise that they bring to that particular board, some of them are retired, and they bring just a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge. And then there's others that are at work, and they too have incredible knowledge that they're bringing. And it come January, that's I believe it starts in January is when our board's applications need to be submitted. So just a reminder to everybody that whether you work or are retired, it's these boards are very important to us. So thank you very much. Council, did you have anything else? If not, City Manager.
That's it on this topic, Mr. Mayor. So I think we're ready to move on to the next item.
And so we will. All right. Thank you very much, Andrea. Jennifer. All right. We will move on to ordinance number 41-2020, an ordinance on second reading, adding chapter 23 entitled Short-Term Rentals to Title 3 Business Regulations of the Littleton City Code. And just for our listening audience, I know Karen, you're out there. This would be the item that when your turn comes up, it'll be during this item. So with that, Council, this is an item that we will make some decisions tonight on how we're going to proceed with this. Council, just and for our listening folks, the Council has had several study sessions on short-term rentals, and staff has heard Council. Staff has heard from the Citizens Task Force Working Group on short-term rentals, and also from numerous citizens. And that's how this particular order, or the ordinance that we're looking at tonight, how it came to us. It was a result of that conversation. The last council, and many of us were still on this council, but the last council, we had worked on this for over 8 months on short-term rentals. And we ended up not coming to any conclusion or an ordinance on this particular issue. And interestingly enough, I think this council is finding itself in a similar situation where we've been working on this for a while, and it's not as easy as one would think. That's for doggone sure. But we do have an ordinance before us tonight that's not perfect. So we do have some options here of what we can do, Council. We can amend the proposed ordinance. And with amendments, though, that especially with numerous amendments, it does have some unintended consequences that we don't always get a chance to think out properly. The ordinance can be very different than what was proposed in our first reading, and that's not necessarily a good for citizens if we change it drastically from first reading to second reading. One of our other options that we can table this particular item. We'd have to get it through the city manager on a date that would be possible, but I'm pretty sure it's somewhere January, February, March. So it is out there quite a ways because of our schedule. We can just plain outright vote down this particular proposed ordinance and continue to have nothing on the books, which is not necessarily a good thing. Or we can pass the proposed ordinance, thereby getting some guidelines and understanding of council that we are going to address this item sometime next year. But by passing this particular ordinance, we will finally have an ordinance on the book. But again, I caution council about adding numerous amendments to this. And with that, City Manager, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Just adding a little bit to what the mayor was sharing. So staff is going to make a presentation here. Obviously, we've had a study session a while back where council gave a specific direction. So for the public, we are taking kind of a narrow slice of this issue here. We're not solving all things here with this proposed ordinance. It is mostly about licensing. The strategy with this is to take up the rest of the issues here as part of the ULUC discussion here, kind of later, the first part of next year. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the neighborhood section starts roughly in February with the ULUC. And so a lot of that work will carry on beyond this meeting here in addressing short-term rentals. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass this on to Jennifer Henninger, our Community Development Director.
I had to unmute myself. Sorry about that. All right. Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
I see it.
Excellent. Okay. All right. That's one thing that's improving during this, my sharing abilities on Zoom. So as Mark said, this evening, we're going to be talking about our narrow slice at short-term rentals. See if we can get this. So what we're looking for this evening is action on this ordinance, and we're looking for an approval on Ordinance 41 in relation to short-term rentals and Title III. On our schedule and where we are in this, currently the existing resources that we use to address short-term rentals is police, code, and mediation. Those are the departments that are involved. What we're proposing this evening is a phased approach. That phased approach, this phase one, is what we are addressing this evening, and that is to update the licensing code via Ordinance 41, 2020. And then phase two, as Mark said, will be reconciliation and addressing the things that are not covered in this ordinance through our ULUC process. In terms of an analysis, right now we have 47 registered short-term rentals. Just to give you a little perspective, we have over 8,000 long-term rentals in the city, and we have over 20,000 residences in the city. Right now, we also do not have a specific definition pertaining to short-term rentals. So that is something we are addressing with this code in front of you this evening. The proposed STR license ordinance that you have before you this evening has new definitions, and those are found on page 2 and 3 of the ordinance. We have license registration restrictions, and those are on pages 9 through 11 of the ordinance. We also talk about denial, removal, and revocation. Those are on pages 4 through 8 of the ordinance. And then we also have created good neighbor handouts and letters, and copies of those revised documents are in your packet. Two new definitions that I would like to point out are the difference on short-term non-primary rental and short-term primary rental. And there have been some discussions and comments pertaining to these. And these, right now, for the purposes of licensing, there is not much of a difference. When we get to the other parts of the ULUC, you will start seeing a difference on those. In terms of license requirements and restrictions, right now we are proposing that STRs not be permitted in accessory dwelling units. And the main reason for that is currently we do not have a definition for accessory dwelling units, nor do we have regulations associated as to where those can go. So that is why we have that aspect in the licensing right now. We're also suggesting a limit of 2 renters per bedroom with a maximum total of 8. And if you'll recall, during our study session, we did have a conversation about this and kind of took an informal poll. And this is the direction that council gave staff at the time, that we not differentiate between children and adults, and that we put it as a total max 8 persons. Also, there was a discussion on parking, and we have modified the ordinance from first reading to second reading that just simply states that all STRs will be required to provide 2 off-street parking spaces. We did not get into the differentiation between on-street and off-street parking for that. And then all STRs must display the Good Neighbor handout, and we have given a more specific location for that. And we've also given some timing in regards to the Good Neighbor letter. And I think I pretty much just covered this, that we did do some changes on parking requirements, the posting location, the timing of mailing, and then we also made a modification to proof of ownership and what that means. Some other things that we did hear from the Citizen Action Committee that was working on this was a request to extend the license renewal timeframe. As staff, we felt like right now that extending this to beyond an annual renewal was not the most prudent thing to do, given the changes that we know we're going to make once we get to the ULUC, and also seeing how these regulations go. As the mayor said, these are not perfect, and so we needed to give ourselves that flexibility to be able to check in with our 47 STR owners. We did not do the maximum occupancy that was talked about by the citizens, again, for the reason that we had this conversation with council and we felt the direction that we got was 8 persons max. And then there's also been some conversation about multiple uses of an STR. And while that may be something we would consider in the future, the purpose of this ordinance is very narrowly focused on the lodging aspect and the regulations associated with the licensing for that. So that is why that is not addressed at this time. So as I stated before, we do still have our Good Neighbor guidelines as well as the handout, and we did tighten up the posting location as well as the timing of sending that notice out to surrounding property owners. In terms of fiscal impact, currently there are no fees for anyone who is applying for an STR license. Right now that's considered a tax license. There's also no annual renewal requirement or annual inspection requirement. What we are proposing is a $200 license fee, and we actually had added that license fee in anticipation of this ordinance. And so the resolution that you had for the 2021 fees has this $200 fee on that. And that was a resolution passed in October. And why we're proposing $200 is that it starts to address the administrative costs necessary for processing the applications, the code enforcement time necessary, and also the building inspector time necessary to ensure code compliance. We also need to take into account we may need to hire an outside consultant to monitor the rental websites. For example, in the city and county of Denver, there is an entire department now devoted to short-term rentals. And when we did research, we also found that there is a range of license fees per other municipalities, and that range was anywhere from $250 to $500. So we felt that $200 was a good place to start. So with that, our staff recommendation still stands that we would like to see the approval of the ordinance as stated before you this evening, adding Chapter 23 entitled Short-Term Rentals to Title III Business Regulations of the Municipal Code. So myself, Reed, and Mike are here to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you very much. Council, if we don't have any questions right now, then we'll go to our public meeting. Do we have any questions, Council? I don't see any. Okay. So, Sam, if you would please inform the audience how they can participate.
Thank you, Mayor. Citizens wishing to speak during public comment who have not already joined our queue should please call 669-900-6833. Enter the webinar ID 963-3381-1183 Please stay on the line and press *9 to raise your hand and be recognized. If you are already in our queue, please go ahead and press *9 now.
Great. And excuse me, Sam, I'm going to open up the public hearing. It is 7:24. Do we have any callers?
Thank you, Mayor. We currently have a couple of callers. Our
Great.
first caller is going to be 776. Caller 776, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
All right, Karen.
Hey, thanks for waiting.
Thanks for holding on.
No worries. I actually did have some questions about what was mentioned, and I was not able to watch the slides because I'm dialed in. But I guess clarification about the number of parking spaces, is that per house property, or is it per listing? Because one could list more than one room per house. I'm sorry, I also mentioned my name. If you want me to restate that, it's Karen.
I think we're good, Karen. We got you earlier.
You good? Okay, cool. And the other question was a $200 fee. Did it include the building inspection and code enforcement, or are those separate fees? Those are just two questions that came up while the presentation was being given. But the comment I wanted to make is that as a short-term renter myself, I have been doing this for about 2.5 years, quite successfully, out of my townhome where I actually live. So I'm providing direct oversight of my guests. And I think that's kind of a key feature about short-term rentals for stays that are shorter than, say, 30 days, because I would not personally want to live next to someone in a townhome who is not present on the premises while they're doing short-term rentals and people are coming and going. That would be a bit disruptive. But knowing that the homeowner is in their home and providing that kind of direct oversight, that is a reassurance that my neighbors have actually expressed to me directly, stating that they appreciate how well I actually do provide it. Because it's just like having guests of family or friends to them. It's no different because they know I'm there. And I think it would also resolve a lot of the good neighbor issues that are brought up where you have bad guests behaving badly. Well, with the homeowner there, guests perform or behave much, much better, knowing that there are direct consequences to their actions. And I'm pretty strict about how my guests are, what they're allowed to do. It's no smoking, no drug abuse, no alcohol abuse, and things like that. And I think it makes it better for everybody involved. And as being in my home, I would like to retain the rights to have people in my home and not have restrictions of the people who are coming and going, regardless of their nature, be it friends, family, or paying guests. So those are kind of my comments that I wanted to make, is that I think by requiring the owner to live in the home for the short-term rentals, shorter than 30 days or even longer than that for that matter, but definitely for shorter, have the homeowner on premises at all times.
30 seconds.
And that's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you much, Karen. And since it sounds like you're a first-time caller, you posed a couple of questions, and staff will likely get to that here after we have our callers. Sama, if we could have our next caller, please.
Yes, the next caller will be 044. Caller 044, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Good evening. My name is Mark. I'm a resident of District 3, and I just wanted to thank the council for considering this issue and thank the staff for doing the research and taking the time to study and work on this and present this ordinance. You can see some of my comments in the community comment section, so I won't go into all that. I just wanted to say that I urge you to pass the resolution as it stands. I do think there could be some more restrictions placed on non-resident short-term rental owners, which is the situation I find myself living next to for about 1.5 years. And the situation is unpleasant for a number of reasons, which I mentioned in my email. But lately, what we're seeing is more and more people using this property as like a conference center. So we've had bachelor parties and wedding receptions and family reunions. And the most recent one was a company rented out the house for 3 days of staff meetings. So that increased traffic on our street, people who don't know where the kids live, the rhythms of the neighborhood and things like that. It's extremely disruptive in that regard. And so I think the ordinance answers most of that. At least it provides a mechanism for me to communicate, particularly via the good neighbor handout. I think is pretty critical. I don't know who to call if I have issues, and I don't think that burden should be on the city. I think it should be on the property owner, which would be, a big difference. I agree with Karen. If it was a resident owner, then it's probably quite a different situation. But right now, this is functionally a motel with no supervision. Not even nobody there. It's all self check-in, and I have never met the owner. I don't know who it is. So I just wanted to add my opinion, and I thank you for all the hard work, and I appreciate your consideration of this matter.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Sam, next caller.
Yes, our next caller will be caller 954. Caller 954, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. This is Angela Engel, and I live in the Stern Park area, and I am a short-term rental owner. I'm also part of the coalition that was assembled after the council attempted a short-term rental ordinance in January of 2019. And we as the citizens did a really unique thing. And Mary, you mentioned this, but we came together representing both sides of the issue to try and find a compromise. And one of the reasons that ordinance didn't go through the last time was because it had a requirement that the short-term rental be a primary residence. And that posed a problem for several of the current operating STRs because they weren't primary residents and it would have shut them down. So we wanted to work on something that would represent a compromise, would make sure that we provided safe and security, that if there were problem STR renters, that there was a recourse to handle that. And what we decided on was not solely a primary residence. We distinguished between a primary residence and a non-primary residence. But what we decided was that if we limited the number of licenses to 2, and we required that the owners be Littleton residents, that we were more likely to have STR owners that were responsive to any problems, but also had an investment into the community. And the current iteration of this ordinance doesn't include those requirements, so that someone from Texas or Florida could buy a STR license. They could even buy perhaps, a small inn or a hotel and rent those out as STRs. They could have unlimited STRs. And we wanted to prohibit that. Both sides of the coalition came to consensus that we wanted to make sure that we just preserved the sense of community. And that was our compromise. So that's not included in this current version. And we would like for council to consider an amendment to that. And also our recommendations included a maximum capacity of 12, because we have some STRs that have 5 bedrooms. And
30 seconds.
I think that there was a miscommunication in terms of translating that information. We did submit those recommendations back in August, and we worked in alliance with the city council members and city staff to make sure that this could all be vetted in advance. So to not include those 2 aspects doesn't quite accomplish what we were hoping to accomplish with an STR ordinance that ensured that there was recourse for problematic STRs and also that there was a local commitment. So I hope that council will pass this and that there will be an amendment.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Sam, if we could have our next caller, please.
Thank you. Just a reminder to callers in the queue, please press *9 if you'd like to raise your hand to be recognized to speak. Our next caller is caller 760. Caller 760, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Good evening. Thanks to the City Council for the opportunity to speak on this issue. My name's Tom Grant. I live at 1194 East Phillips Place, and we've been here since 1992. I'm currently on the Littleton Transportation and Mobility Advisory Board, and I'm also serving on Kensington Ridge Homeowners Association Board here in Southeast Littleton. Our HOA recently discovered, to our surprise, that a home in the neighborhood had been converted to an Airbnb short-term rental. Now, this first came to my attention when I saw two young men that I'd never seen before or met smoking cannabis on the patio of the home behind me. There were suddenly a lot of different cars coming and going to the home in what had previously had been a quiet home. So what we, with a little bit of investigation, discovered was that they, without consulting the surrounding neighbors, had converted, a new renter had come in, converted the home to a short-term rental, essentially a boarding house right behind us in a neighborhood where we've been for 3 decades. The maintenance of the lawn and the yard appeared to be declining. And because short-term rentals weren't around when our neighborhood was built, our covenants didn't address them. So the Homeowners Association Board has since voted to ban short-term rentals of less than 30 days. Our concern is that this neighborhood was built for single-family residences since its inception almost 40 years ago. Owner-occupied homes are really the secret sauce to creating stability in a community through the pride of ownership, and that improves the quality of life for everybody here in Littleton. Home ownership and long-term rentals foster a cohesive community by building deeper ties to the community. Transient rentals, especially in non-owner-occupied homes, offer no such benefit. Using neighborhoods built for single-family occupancy for short-term rentals may benefit out-of-town investors, but they pose a threat to the stability and quality of life in Littleton. I believe that protecting the existing character of our neighborhoods is an important and appropriate function of city regulation, and I support this first step passing, and I actually look forward to other limits so that we don't have to look back and say, well, we can't change it because there's already too many of them in existence.
30 seconds.
Thank you for your opportunity to address this, and I appreciate the discussion on this.
Great. Thank you, Tom, and thank you for your time for volunteering on our boards. Thank you very much. Sama, next.
Thank you, Mayor. We have one other hand raised. I'd like to make a final reminder. If you're in our queue and would like to be recognized, please press *9 to raise your hand. Our last caller at this time is caller 212. Caller 212, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Good evening, Council. This is Dan Radulovich, 7000 South Gallup Street. And more things change, the more they stay the same, right? So I was a part of the group that came together to come up with some proposed regulations on short-term rentals. And before I get into my comments, complaints, and opinions on this, I will say that this ordinance is better than nothing, which is what we currently have. And it does give the city a mechanism to deal with some issues. That being said, this is very cookie cutter in nature. There's only 2 things that I could pick out of this particular ordinance that we had come up with. The first was the neighborhood notification. The other was the establishing 2 different types of licenses. It appears the ULUC will determine where these rentals will be, as far as which type of license will be allowed where. It also seems the city is depending very heavily on the ULUC to update to take on many facets of this issue, but it does seem that many naturally belong in the licensing section. Some of the biggest and most widely accepted ideas that our group came up with seem to naturally be addressed in the licensing section, and they are as follows. First is requiring Littleton citizenship to own an STR of any type. This was the very first thing that we all came to a consensus to. That's how important it was to all of us. This naturally limits the number of STRs in the city and to a certain degree keeps corporations from entering the market. The second thing is allowing one of each type of license per applicant. So you can have one owner-occupied and one non-owner-occupied. Limiting the number of licenses to applicants is basically universal in all the ordinances that I have read from other jurisdictions. It takes many forms such as primary residency or explicitly saying you have to be a resident of this city and you can only have X number, or even putting a cap on the number that the city total can have. Last is occupancy. Our group actually never set a hard cap on how many people could be in these rentals. The number we came up with was 2 per bedroom plus 4. The occupancy was limited by the size of the home. Since this ordinance does not seem to create an exemption for children, which is something else we also suggested, this number seems fairly appropriate. So if there could be some clarity on how the ULUC could address these issues, I would welcome the conversation. But the ULUC is for land use, not for licensing requirements. What I would like to say is if someone was thinking about opening an STR in Littleton, they're going to go here first. They are not going to go digging through the ULUC to figure out what is allowed where. This is where they're going to go. This is where they're going to get their information.
30 seconds.
And I know all of you hate last minute amendments. Every one of you does. I know you do. However, we feel that these are some of the strongest ideas and concepts that we came up with. And as always, thank you for your time and your service. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Dan. And also thank you for your time volunteering on our boards. Sama, do we have anything else?
Yes, we have a number of other hands up now. The next caller is 959. Caller 959, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Bill Barrett. I reside at 501 East Nichols Drive in Littleton. Thank you for providing this opportunity for my wife and I to share our experiences living next door to a short-term rental. We were excited about our move to Littleton a few years ago, especially about our home in Oak Brook, where neighbors warmly greeted us. Last year, the home adjacent to our property was purchased by a couple who lived 30 minutes away. They hired a property management service out of Denver. The main concern we would like to address is the enormous negative effects that a non-owner occupied short-term rental has on neighbors. The house is listed on Airbnb and is self-entry by keypad. It's essentially a mini hotel with no on-site management. There's been high turnover and constant traffic, even throughout COVID. From day to day, we don't know what we'll face, but we've experienced a range of activities, including loud talking, screaming, music, parties, drug use, smoking, drug delivery, and fighting. The property management company will only accept a text from us, no person-to-person discussion. When we've made reports to them about the activity next door, they ask us to provide photos or videos. The burden of proof is on us. Documenting the activity taking place next door is time-consuming and puts us at risk with strangers who have not been vetted and are sometimes under the influence of substances. The only intervention the management company has provided is phone calls, which has proven useless to stop activity. They're no longer responding to our texts. Our only recourse is to call the police. The management company has used dishonest tactics, such as taking down its listing and putting it back up under another name to avoid negative reviews. We've made reports to Airbnb, which have proven to be futile. They offer no protection for neighbors. They do not conduct background checks of guests staying in the house, nor intervene when problems occur. Even on good days, having a hotel next door breaks down the fabric of a neighborhood and the comfort, safety, and fellowship of having neighbors. Our security has been replaced with anxiety about who will occupy the space on any given day. Our loss of privacy drives us inside rather than using our own deck and exchanging pleasant words with neighbors. The hotel has changed our lives, cheapened our quiet and friendly neighborhood, and has occupied too much space in our minds. We cannot relax in our own home, the place that is supposed to be our sanctuary. STRs that have an owner on site to accommodate guests, manage activities, and maintain the property are safer for the community. They reduce risks and ensure peace in the neighborhood for all tax-paying homeowners. We urge you to consider that hotel-like rentals have a one-sided advantage for the business owner and understand that the neighbors are left to the mercy of the off-site management companies that are non-responsive and cater to their bottom line. We strongly believe that in order to preserve our neighborhoods, out-of-town investors should not be given licenses to operate hotels in residential areas. Our story may seem like that one problem case. However, without regulations on hotel-like STRs and with surrounding towns implementing regulations, we will not be the outliers. Littleton risks an erosion of safe, family-friendly neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Samantha, next caller, please.
Next caller is caller 819. Caller 819, please begin speaking.
Hi, this is Pam Chaplin. Excuse me, I live downtown and I have a short-term rental next to me too. I'd like to say I agree with Karen. She eloquently said requiring and very responsibly said requiring the owner to live in the home with an owner on premises causes the tenants, the short-term renters, to behave differently. Also, the owner enforces the rules, and that doesn't fall on the neighbors. And I think Bill just pointed out how the burden falls on the neighbors, and that should never happen. That's not our job. Someone else is collecting money and profiting from this business, but the burden and the work and the anxiety and the impact falls on the neighbors. And council, what you're there to do is to protect us, I think, not to help investors. So I do agree with the couple of folks from the Alliance. Please implement their suggestion to not allow out-of-town investors to own short-term rentals. That seems like a great idea, and it should be there. But don't allow maximum of 12. The maximum that you've proposed is a good start. I finally want to mention something nobody brings up, which is we have motels and hotels for people who want to do other stuff in wherever they're at, in these short-term rentals. We, the city of Littleton, and we, the neighbors of Littleton, don't need to supply everybody who wants to travel with a nice home next door to us. That's not our job. And it is the city's job to protect our property rights. Let hotels and motels deal with large groups or people who are here for conventions or something like that. Support our local businesses, our hotels and motels. I do not understand, council, why there's this appeal or draw for short-term rental owners when motels and hotels have this business. They employ people. They take care of the issues on site. They don't push it off on the neighbors. So please, council, I think that the code that you have is a great start. Please keep the limit of occupancy in there, but do restrict the owners. And finally, I do think they should all be owner occupied. That would really limit the number and protect us from the impacts. Thanks very much.
Great. Thank you, Pam. Sama, next caller.
Yes, our next caller is 042. Caller 042, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hi, this is Michael Orff calling. I'm a resident of Littleton. I think I'm in District 3. I'm in the Southbridge neighborhood. I am a short-term rental owner, and I am a member of the coalition that was discussed previously that Angela and Dan are called in previously. They're also members of the coalition. And I just wanted to echo what they kind of said. The two things that we would like to see added to the ordinance are limiting short-term rentals to Littleton residents, and also only 2 licenses, perhaps one non-owner occupied and one owner occupied per resident, and also the occupancy limits that we discussed previously. I just wanted to point out that I've actually owned a short-term rental. It's not my primary residence. Somewhat near downtown Littleton. I've owned it for almost 4 years now, and I feel like I'm a pretty responsible owner. I've never had a complaint from any neighbors, and actually, it's part of an HOA. I attend the HOA meetings, and my neighbors actually come up to me and say, "Hey, we just want to commend you on how you manage your short-term rental. The people that stay there, they're very nice. We talk to them, and it's great to have somewhere for them to stay when they're coming in from out of town and support our Littleton businesses." So, I think the ordinance as it stands with the amendments that I suggested, or the coalition suggested, will support short-term rental owners like myself, and also limit the issues that some of the callers have called in about already, and kind of putting in regulations to help the city and the neighbors to address issues when those come up. So I would commend the council and the city manager and attorney in putting this together with the input from the coalition, and just I think those couple of amendments will make it even stronger. So I thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Sam Fox.
Mayor, we have no other hands raised.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, with that, I will close the public hearing. It is 7:49. And council, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead, please.
I move to approve ordinance 41-2020 on second reading, adding chapter 23 entitled short-term rentals to title 3 business regulations to the Littleton City Code.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. We have a second from Councilmember Milliman. Councilmember Elrod.
From a process perspective, when would be a good time to ask questions? There were some questions from the public and also some questions that I want to bring forward as well.
Yeah, let's go ahead and let's start her out right now.
Okay, so so staff, can you address the question regarding clarification on the parking? And I forgot Karen's other question. I don't know if you
parking and fee.
Yes. So in regards to the parking is 2 spots per residential structure, if you will. So it wouldn't be per bedroom if they're renting those separately. It's just per structure. And then your other question, Karen, in regards to, it was the fee, and if that $200 was all encompassing, and the answer is yes, it would cover the actual fee. It would cover any code things that happen. If they have to pull a building permit for anything associated with establishing their short-term rental, that would be a separate fee. But the $200 that we're talking about would cover the things mentioned in the PowerPoint.
And one thing that I would add is someone operating an STR, they can only have one party at a time, so they can't, rent out separate rooms to multiple different parties that are not affiliated with them.
Thank you.
The question that Karen had asked was, is it per listing or per residence? So to clarify that, there should only be one listing associated with the property at a time.
Good. Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, Councilmember Elrod, do you have another question?
Can I ask my question now?
Sure.
So the question that I actually have, if you could expand on this, Jennifer, the definition of short-term primary rental versus definition of short-term non-primary rental. And, as many citizens spoke here, what the term that was being used was owner-occupied versus non-owner occupied, which is quite clear. This short-term primary versus non-primary is what is not clear. The question that I have is, in the current definition, a current owner of a residence in the city of Littleton would not be able to utilize their home as a short-term rental unoccupied, meaning they go to Florida for the winter, that home, while it's their primary home, they would not be able to rent at that time as a short-term rental because it's not because the primary only limits it to a portion of the home, meaning a room. So the spirit of owner-occupied and non-owner-occupied, to me, is not reflected in these definitions.
City Attorney, do you have any response?
I guess I need to understand the question better. Is the question that you don't like the definition because it doesn't allow for primary residences of an individual for them to rent it out over the summer?
Correct. It's not. Yes, that's how I'm understanding it. And
did you have a response for that, Reed? Or
it's given my concern with this. The reason I'm asking this question. It's given a inequitable or disadvantage to actually the Littleton resident, the Littleton homeowner, where the non-occupied rental is only made available to non-owners and not available to owners. So I think it.
Reed, do you understand that question?
I don't know if it's a question or a comment.
I'm asking for clarification if my understanding is correct, that a owner of a home in Littleton would not be able to rent their home while they're away, but yet a non-owner of or non-resident of a home in Littleton, so someone from Denver has a property here, they could rent the property.
Right now, that is correct. And they could always apply for a non-primary license if you wanted to do that, even though you live there.
So a non-primary, so why don't we just call it owner occupied or non-owner occupied? Because non-primary means not my home, but it is my home. It is my primary home. I'm just gone for a month. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yes.
Okay, that's. I think that's what you're going to get right now, Karina. All right.
I have other questions that I'll hold for now.
Okay, cool. Well, go ahead and get your questions out now because I want to get to other council members. But if you could get yours out, then we'll go to council, then me, then Councilmember Milliman.
Okay. So hold on. So these were. One second. There was, so my question was on multiple uses. So this was one of the questions that I proposed or I had sent earlier, and I want to make that question here public. So there is language that says that short-term rentals, buildings that are considered short-term rentals cannot be used for other purposes. If I am a homeowner and I rent a portion of my home as a short-term rental, but I also have an accounting service that I am now doing out of my home as a home-based business, this multi-use would essentially prohibit that. So that is how I'm understanding this language. And my question here is why would we do that? Why would we limit multi-use in this scenario, but not multi-use in other home-based scenarios?
I'm staring at Jennifer to find out if she wants to jump in.
Yeah, you go ahead, Reed.
I think what the intent was to ensure that events weren't occurring during an STR rental. I don't think it was designed or worded in such a way that it was supposed to prohibit I guess we'll call it a primary owner, a primary occupier from doing whatever it is that they do from their home-based business. That wasn't the intent, at least.
Correct.
So is there a better way to write this? Because it does not specify that particular use. It says any multi-use. So, you know, my concern is when we talk about intent, we understand it here amongst the 7 councils members and staff, but intent 10 years from now or 20 years from now is not understood. So if you have a recommendation of a better script for that?
Well, the specific language that you're referring to, and for those following along at home, is 32310A8. The specific language says, limitation on multiple uses. During any rental period, the short-term rental shall not be used for any purpose, e.g. home-based business, temporary event, etc., by the renter or owner other than for lodging purposes. So the intent was specifically that actual location that's being used. The intent was so that someone wasn't coming in and having, as we heard a couple of our callers come in, some event, some sort of conference, something along those lines, not for someone coming in and staying the weekend to go visit their parents or one of those things.
So you're saying the language does adequately allow for, or said another way, the language does not prohibit a secondary use of that home for another in-home business.
Correct. That is not my reading of it, that it would prohibit it.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification.
All right, Councilmember, I'm going to go ahead and move on to some other folks here.
That's fine. I'll come back.
Okay, thank you. And I'm up, and then it'll be Councilmember Milliman. So I know we don't have a perfect ordinance, and we can pick this thing apart all night long. We can go well into the late hours. But right now, we have nothing on the books. Obviously, this is going to have to come back to council here at some point. And I'm going to ask the city manager, at what point do you think we could get this on the schedule that we could either, depending on what we do tonight, that at another time, though, that we can either clean this thing up or bring it back from the dead?
Well, Mayor, I think as this conversation plays out with council and depending on what you approve, one thought I've had is that there's a whole list of issues here that are tied to short-term rentals. Many of the council have articulated that over time. I do think that it is in my suggestion is for staff to assemble that list of other things that must be addressed. Then I would be going back to staff, sitting down and looking at this with the ULUC consultant, and then trying to pick a specific moment in time. My guess is that it will probably be in January or February. At a minimum, I think what I'd like to do is to spend maybe, say, 30 minutes at a study session to confirm with council here early on that we do have kind of the complete list of things that council would like us to address. So in other words, we could have that discussion, say, in early January to confirm that, and then we could perhaps work with our consultant to kind of expand on the timeline of that. So remember, the ULUC, the neighborhood discussion, is in February. So a lot of this work is going to be proceeding here as we kind of run this conversation in parallel. But we'll look for milestones to come back and kind of flesh out some of the detail for council.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll go to City Attorney, then Councilmember Milliman.
Yeah, just real quick. I don't know if it will be helpful. Perhaps it'll be helpful in taking the conversation and any amendments to come to respond to some of the questions that we heard during public comment, specifically from the coalition. They asked for really two big asks, if you will. One is limiting the types of licenses right now, one apiece. So you can only have one primary, you can only have one non-primary. And the other theme that I heard was making it only for Littleton residents. Littleton residents could be the only one to operate STRs. So, I'll take the last one first. That one raises some legal concerns for me, making it Littleton only residents that are allowed to operate STRs. I don't know if it's an equal protection issue, but it's not as necessarily tied to our police powers as, say, having owner-occupied or primary rental would be. That ensures kind of the order that you heard from some individuals saying that they operate, they're owner-occupied, they're primary rental, they are there, they're on site, and it's worked well for them. So that's why that wasn't added in. That's a concern that I had raised in terms of requiring Littleton-only residents. We've heard from the coalition, they wanted to limit corporations from owning it. I don't necessarily know if that helps anything. Obviously, it's really easy to form an LLC. You can do that right now on the Secretary of State's homepage. It costs you $50 and it will take you 5 minutes. And there are so many different ownership structures as it relates to properties, whether they're owned in a trust, whether they're owned by an LLC, whether they're owned by a corporation. You could have multiple owners. A lot of people are married. They have 2 people on there. What if one person does not actually live within the city? Those are some of the challenges behind kind of limiting it to Littleton only or Littleton residents. So that's why that was never adopted, at least in this iteration. One of the other themes that we heard was limiting the 1 license each. That's fine, but the concern is that, as I mentioned, it's really easy to form an LLC. So you can have, Reed Betzing LLC 1, Reed Betzing LLC 2. Technically, they're different owners because it's an LLC that owns it. So those are some of the challenges, and those are the things that we wrestled with when taking the coalition's thoughts and comments and trying to incorporate them into a licensing framework. I felt as if we listened to a lot of the input that they had provided back in April of 2019, where the group had submitted kind of some terms. But right now, this was, as mentioned, as we started this at the beginning, this is our kind of thin slice at this. This is our first take at this, our first layer. And so we have an opportunity going forward to see how this licensing framework works. What needs to be fixed? What comes out through the ULUC? What needs to be added? One of the things that the coalition brought last year was different zoning districts. And that was something that we couldn't incorporate without going through the ULC. So, for example, they wanted non-primary in certain types of zoning districts and primary in other districts. That's a bigger public conversation that needs to be fully vetted through the ULUC process. So that's why that was never incorporated into this kind of first run at the licensing. Jennifer, what am I missing in terms of questions that were asked during public comment that we could address?
No, I think a little bit more than questions, but some of the concerns that were raised. I heard a lot about there's no oversight. We don't know who to call. And that's a big reason that we put together that Good Neighbor handout and the guidelines so that residents are notified when an STR goes into their neighborhood and that they all have a number to call when things aren't going the way that they had hoped. So that is something that came out of the coalition as well to address those concerns. I did like the comment that STR guests do support local businesses in Littleton. I mean, if you look at it from that aspect. But yeah, I mean, what Reed said, I mean, this is as far as we felt like we could go without having a more robust conversation that's going to occur during the ULUC. And there are items that are being requested this evening that aren't land use. I think somebody made that comment, and that's, when we're putting these regulations together today, it's not the end all to be all. It isn't perfect. And we'll be looking for the feedback and how is this working and what suggestions do you have? But again, it's something we need to address it. And this is the first phase.
And it may come through, it may come out that non-owner occupied shouldn't run STRs. That may come out through the ULUC as we look at neighborhoods and the effect it has on the character. And we could simply just prohibit it. But until we've had that discussion and got that input, it's too early to do that now. So that's why we currently have 2 licensing schemes for the non-primary and the primary. But I would say by and large in the Denver metro area, most are owner occupied. They're most primary rentals. That's what most jurisdictions do on the Front Range. Now in the mountain towns, it's obviously
totally different
story. So we allowed the opportunity to be able to do that and fill that in through the ULUC.
I'm going to move on to Councilmember Milliman and then Driscoll.
I have a question about the maximum occupancy. I think, we had talked about at our last meeting that we agreed that 8 would be the maximum. But from what I understand, the coalition actually did agree on 12. And I was going to propose an amendment tonight to increase that maximum from 8 to 12. But my question is, where do children fall into this? And what is the age that we consider children? Is it 17 and younger? Is it 12 and younger? And
So-
if I don't propose this amendment tonight, can I propose it sometime later once we get some more clarification about that?
Sure,
We can add it to the list.
This came up at the study session in terms of increasing that number or whether or not it included children. And I believe the direction that council gave at that time was, let's not, children are people too. It's 8 persons, including children. And that was the direction that we received, last month when we talked about this.
Okay. All right.
I definitely I want to pursue that and add that to the list to be discussed.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Councilmember Milliman. Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, Jerry, I think you did a nice job of sort of preferencing this whole discussion around short term. We've been going around and around for close to 2 years now, and I think this is a great first step by staff. I'm in favor of moving forward as written, and to Kelly's point, I know there are some additional amendments that people would like to make, but boy, I sure would like to just get this on the books and then let's get back into a study session and vet this out. Like you said, we can go until midnight if we wanted to.
I gotcha. But we still have Councilmember Elrod up, but Council, are you ready to? We have a motion. Or does anybody want to continue more discussion, or are you ready to go to a vote?
Can I just ask a question from a process perspective, given what was shared by reading?
Well, I want to hear from Council. Council, we do have a motion. I mean, we can keep processing and picking this thing apart, but Council, remember, if you could, Elrod, if you could just make it a quick question, that'd be great. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so it comes back to reference to owner occupied and non-owner occupied. We don't have any definition in the code in this license here. So is that an item that we can take up at this in conjunction with the ULUC? Because I think that is in fact a gap here. Everyone has been referring to it in that manner, and that is not.
I see the city manager nodding his head yes. Great. All right, cool. So Council, we do have a motion in a second. Are you ready to vote? I believe so. So a thumbs up will be to move this forward with an approval. Thumbs down is to deny. And it is city manager with the understanding of council that this will be coming back to us January, February timeframe, so that we can go over all the good suggestions that we heard tonight.
Correct, Mayor. I'll follow up via email to confirm the process, but pretty much as I explained here earlier.
Great. Thank you very much. Council, let's go ahead and vote. Ready? Vote.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you, Council. That is a tough one. Short-term rentals is not an easy one, as many of us already know. We're going to move on to our last item tonight, and that is ordinance 42-2020, an ordinance on second reading, amending various sections of Title III, Chapter 9 to require collection and remittance of the Littleton sales tax by remote sellers. Let's see, this will require some action on our part tonight to either approve or disapprove the ordinance that is being proposed. I'll turn it over to City Manager.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I know Tiffany Hooten's been waiting here. There's Tiffany. We have talked about this before, and so this is the second reading and the public hearing. So with that, I'll let Tiffany make a presentation.
Sure, thank you. I am going to get my presentation up here. Maybe. Sorry, Tyler, I'm not seeing. Oh, here we go. Got it. All right. I'm hoping everyone can see that. I'm going to jump in. So before you this evening, we have ordinance 42-2020, and these include various amendments to Title III, Chapter 9, of the sales tax code, which is requiring collection and remittance of Littleton sales tax by remote sellers. So the policy question you have before you this evening is, do you support amendments to Littleton City Code Title 3, Chapter 9, which will require collection and remittance of the Littleton sales tax by remote sellers? So just a summary of what is before you this evening. I think if you are a business owner or you know those who are business owners, I think many of them will agree that the collection of sales tax on internet sales is complicated for Colorado. We have a number of home rule cities who self-collect their taxes. We have a number of statutory cities that the state collects on their behalf. We have a number of districts that the state collects. And with all of these different districts, cities, counties, there are also differing sales tax rates. There's additionally differing exemptions. Some cities exempt grocery tax or don't have a grocery tax. Some cities do. So as a business owner, it's very complicated when you're making sales in Colorado. So one of the things that the state had already worked on prior to the Wayfair decision is creating a sales tax simplification task force. And this task force was looking at ways to address and streamline sales and use tax collection in Colorado. After this committee started, the Wayfair decision came out. And while it opened the ability for the state to require companies to collect and remit sales tax on internet transactions, even though the company might not have a nexus or a physical location within the state of Colorado, because of our complex tax system, especially with home rule cities, we weren't able to make any change or require these companies to collect and remit at that time. So in working with CML and the sales tax committee, one of the things that came out of that is the sales and use tax system at the state level. What the system does is it provides the single point of remittance for all businesses to utilize so they can remit sales tax for any jurisdiction in Colorado through one portal. And if you recall, Council has already approved an IGA to work with the state so that we have already joined this system. And currently we are working with them to clarify some tax information. We want to make sure that they have our jurisdiction accurately in their GIS system, so people will know if they're required to collect Littleton tax. And then we're also working on some of the exemptions that we have that are a little different than other cities. So once we are able to finalize that, we will absolutely go live and allow businesses to use that online system. So I think one of the other things that was part of this simplification movement with CML is to come up with some unified definitions and that all cities, home rule cities, can use and amend their code to include the economic nexus definition, and also include the requirement for remote sellers, such as Amazon or some of those other larger retailers, to collect and remit taxes to Littleton. So the amendments that are before you include the definition of economic nexus and why it's different than physical nexus. And it also includes some requirements that marketplace facilitators and sellers, while they don't have a presence in Littleton, they still are going to fall under that economic nexus and be required to collect and remit sales tax to Littleton. I think one thing that we want to just keep in mind as we're looking to amend this code is this is not a new tax. It's basically just changing who is required to remit it to Littleton. Currently, a user, if you purchase sales from an online company and they aren't already voluntarily collecting and remitting to Littleton, that the end user of that product would be required to voluntarily submit that use tax to Littleton and to the state of Colorado. And so all we're doing is moving it from a requirement of that end user, and we're moving it to the marketplace seller or the remote seller to collect and remit that rather than the end user. One thing that we just want to note that kind of the process currently is we are, if a company calls and they ask if they're required to collect and remit, we will tell them currently they are not required, but they can voluntarily collect and remit. And some of those larger retailers have been doing that for well over a year for Littleton. So we are collecting that currently, some of it. I'm sure we all are interested in what the fiscal impacts of this might be to Littleton. And, honestly, we already have a number of those larger retailers voluntarily collecting and remitting. So I think there may be a slight increase in the sales tax revenue for Littleton as more taxpayers come into compliance. And also having that SUTS system at the state of Colorado for a single point of remittance is going to allow businesses to remit easier. And so I do feel like there might be a slight increase in sales tax revenues, and we are definitely going to track any additional revenues that we get on our side so we can collectively report that. But I would say that probably in our case, there's not going to be a significant increase in tax revenues. So the staff recommendation is that you approve these amendments to Title III, Chapter 9, related to remote sellers and the collection or remittance of sales tax. And with that, if you have any questions, I am happy to answer. And I know Reed is on the line as well.
Great. Thank you very much. And we'll start with Council Member Driscoll.
Yes, thank you, Tiffany. For clarification, you said that some of the larger retailers were volunteering to do it. If we pass this ordinance, it will no longer be a volunteer, it'll be required. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Great. All right, if there's no other question, we're going to open up the public hearing. It is 8:21. Sam, if you could please let the audience know how they can participate.
Thank you, Mayor. A reminder to citizens wishing to speak during the public hearing tonight who are not already in the queue, they should please call 669-900-6833, and when prompted, enter the webinar ID 963-3381-1183. Please press *9 to raise your hand. Mayor, our first caller is going to be caller 212. Caller 212, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Good evening, Council. It's Dan Radulovich at 7000 South Gallup again. I think this is about as much a no-brainer as there is. There's obviously a lot of commerce that goes online that luckily they're voluntarily remitting the sales tax right now. And I know I've written Tiffany a couple times on this issue and how we're going to do it. And I think any way that you can make this easier for someone to do it and require it is about as big a no-brainer as there is. So please accept this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dan. Sama, do we have another caller?
Thank you, Mayor. We do have other callers on the line. I'd like to just make a final reminder. If you'd like to speak on this topic, please press *9 to raise your hand and be recognized. Again, that's *9 to raise your hand if you'd like to speak on this topic. Mayor, I am not seeing any other hands raised.
All right. With that, we will close the public hearing at 8:22. Council, I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Councilmember Elrod has made the motion and Driscoll has seconded, I believe. All right. Council, any discussion?
I didn't, but I will. Second.
You didn't, but you will. Somebody did it. It was either that or Scott. All right. Well, cool. Is there any discussion? I see none. Okay. A yes vote is to approve this. And not a yes vote, a thumbs up. And a thumbs down is to deny. So, Council, if we're ready to vote, let's go ahead and vote. Vote.
The vote is 8 in favor because Kelly has 2 thumbs up. The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, just for the record, she only gets to vote once. All right, Council. That is it for tonight. We are through, and we do have a meeting next Tuesday, but not the following Tuesday, just as a reminder.
No, Mayor, we do not have a meeting next Tuesday.
Oh,
next Tuesday is the 24th.
Okay.
That's the week of next week is Thanksgiving, if you can believe it.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's going to be a different Thanksgiving. Okay, well, with that, then everybody have a great, safe Thanksgiving. All righty. It is 8:24, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.